Hello and welcome to the One Take Show. My name is Kaustubh Srivastav, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are in conversation with Mr. Matt Abrahams. Mr. Abrahams is a lecturer at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business. He takes lectures on strategic communication, effective virtual presentation, etc. He is also the host of a wonderful podcast called Think Fast, Talk Smart podcast. He is the author of a great book called Speak Up Without Freaking Out. Also, the website nofreakingspeaking.com. He's the co-founder of Bold Eco Communication Solutions. And if you might want to look a little bit deeper into the personality that Mr. Matt Abrahams is, you can just look for his name on YouTube. You'll find hundreds of videos with millions and millions of views. One of the leading videos that Mr. Abrahams has, which talks about Think Fast, Talk Smart philosophy of his, has about 18 million views. And in this episode, Mr. Abrahams is going to talk about all of this: anxiety in public speaking, how to become better at communication, especially in virtual platforms like Zoom or webinars, which is quite very useful these days. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because I really want to do what I do. If you have any suggestions, feedbacks, make sure you reach out to me. I would absolutely love that. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump right into the conversation with Mr. Matt Abrahams right here on the One Take Show. Hello, Matt. Thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with me and talk about your journey, talk about this project, talk about everything. First of all, I must come off clean. I'm extremely nervous and I am also trying to pull myself together in order to have this conversation with you. But I do believe that you are most certainly the Dronacharya of effective communication, of strategic communication. So thank you so much for sitting down with me. Thank you so much for taking time out.
Well, thank you for the kind compliment, but I'm not sure that's an accurate portrayal of me, but I am happy to be here and I am happy to share my thoughts about effective communication. And thank you for reaching out.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, before I begin this conversation, I think anyone who subscribes to the principle of the One Take Show that this podcast is needs to know about you, needs to know about everything that you teach. So before we get into all of those things that we're going to talk about, first a little bit about your journey. You've had a very interesting journey, and we have all read your interviews and we've heard your talks. But we'd like to know about what inspired you to get into effective communication and this entire field of organizational structures, and how do you become a coach? What inspired you to help other people?
Well, that's a very long answer to that. I'll give you a couple key snippets along the way. So I am the child of a lawyer and a teacher. So helping others has been part of what I saw my entire life with my parents. I also, at a very early age, when I was a freshman in high school, had a very traumatic communication experience that really put me on the course to learn about communication and try to help people get better at communication. I had the opportunity to go to college and after college to graduate school and study communication, where I really learned some academic rigor behind some of the best practices that I had observed and saw others put into practice. And then, worked in high tech for a decade. Had the opportunity to settle down a little bit, not work as hard, and go back to my passion, which was teaching and communication. So the journey was motivated just by my curiosity about communication, my passion to help others, and really the fundamental belief that everybody has something important to say, and we need to just have the confidence and the tools with which to say it. And that's really what motivates me.
So basically, this is very important for us because your journey is so inspiring, and this brings me to your accomplishments are huge. Like, I do not want to even attempt at describing all of them because I will never do justice to them. But we have all watched your videos on YouTube. There are millions and millions of views, millions of people benefit from them. But a very interesting recent development which I have discovered is your podcast. Think Fast, Talk Smart podcast. One of the recent episodes that I've really benefited from is it's not what you say, but how you say it, is with JSB professor Deb Greenfield, if I'm not wrong. That was one of the finest episodes that I've really benefited from. I
Oh, good.
absolutely love your podcast. So I would like to know about what exactly is the principle behind your podcast, and how do you, what exactly do you want to convey through your podcast to your listeners, and how can listeners benefit from it?
Well, thank you. So, many years ago, well, not many, several years ago, about 5 years ago, the business school, Stanford's business school, where I teach part time, and then I also run my consulting practice that I co-founded about 10 years ago. At the business school, they asked me to do a talk. And so I did a talk on how to become better at spontaneous speaking spur of the moment. And the topic was the right topic at the right time. And that's one of the videos you're referring to. People all around the world have been checking in on that. And it's been really fascinating. And I'm really so pleased that people are benefiting from that. And as a result, the business school asked me if I would be willing to take some of those topics and really explore them in depth with some of the just amazing experts that we have on campus at Stanford and at our business school. So the podcast's main goal is to attack a particular communication topic, challenge, conundrum with an expert in the field, and really then dissect best practices that people can take away. For example, the episode you're referring to with Professor Deb Grunfeld is all about power and how you have a strong nonverbal presence. And she's written a book on it. She studied this for a long time. And she helps us understand that there are certain things we can do with our voice, with our wording, with our body posture that can help us be more successful in our communication. And we've done that with lots of other topics. So we've done it with topics around reputation, topics around non-native speaking. We've addressed issues around anxiety. And we have exciting ones coming up. So we have one coming up on humor, how to use humor effectively. We have another one coming up on meetings and how to interact with others more effectively. So for me personally, it's very rewarding because these are colleagues, these are people I know or know of, and I love to get to interview them. And I'm really hoping that people like yourself can take advantage of the things that they share.
Well, we already are. I mean, there is absolutely no denying that we are, at least I am listening to each and every episode, but I will not make a mistake of assuming that I'm the only one, because there are absolutely millions and millions of people out there. This,
Yeah.
you mentioned a video of yours that you, with Stanford Business School, you've talked about a very interesting principle. I want to bring that video up. It is one of the most famous videos of yours, and you talk about a very interesting principle. It is think fast and talk smart. I wouldn't dare to ask you to describe the entire idea behind the principle, but you've also concisely presented in multiple TED Talks as well. So maybe if you can give us a little bit of a gist as to what do you mean by think smart and think fast and talk smart, and what exactly is the principle behind it?
Sure. So all of the work that I do in my consulting practice and when I teach my MBA students and coaches is really around helping people adjust how they approach their communication, as well as the specific tips and tools for crafting communication that can be focused and relevant to their audience, and then how to deliver it. So it's really a three-step process. The way you approach it, it's how you structure it, and then how you deliver it. And in the Think Fast Talk Smart video, as well as in the book I've written and the podcast, we really are trying to help people with best practices around the specifics of each. So when it comes to approach, confidence is critical. Many people are really nervous about speaking in front of others. So you have to start by addressing that anxiety. And there's a separate TED Talk you referred to that addresses that as well, where how can we take this anxiety, acknowledge it, give ourselves permission to experience it, and then use anxiety management tools to help us feel less nervous. Once we've done that, we then have to craft our messages. The key there is to make sure that your messages are relevant to your audience. So it's all about taking an audience-centric approach. You then structure those messages in a way that are packaged easily for people to understand. And then the final step is to deliver them in a way with a strong nonverbal presence so people aren't distracted by any random spurious things you do. And when you can do that all together, the approach, the content, and the delivery, then you have the opportunity to really make your message resonate and have impact on the people you speak to. So the Think Fast, Talk Smart video is really introducing that process. And I leverage some techniques from lots of different areas in science, including improvisation, to help people learn those specific tools.
Right, because that is one of the videos that has, I will be very honest here, has changed my entire outlook to public speaking.
Wow.
Yes, personally, I have found that video to be extremely helpful, and
Thank you.
because of very important advice that you give to us at almost the end of the video when you talk about structure, you talk about the what, and you talk about
What,
how
so
exactly.
what, now what? Yes.
Exactly. So that approach of yours has really changed the entire idea as to how I'm supposed to approach any argumentation or conversation that I'm supposed to disseminate. This brings me to, you talk about your book. There are two books. There's one book that you talk about, speaking up without freaking out, speak up without
Right.
freaking out, and secondly, your website, that is nofreakingspeaking.com. This only shows that you have contributed so much to this field. What inspired you to take up and dig up into this field so that you can contribute so much? And how does your book and your blog and your website can help us in order to understand and get better at public speaking or communication in general?
Well, thank you for that question. So again, I'm really dedicated and motivated to help people feel more comfortable and confident when they speak. The book is a result of when I was teaching early in my career. I would teach strategic communication skills, public speaking skills, and my students would always, at the end of class, thank me and say, these are great skills, but I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to use them because I'm too nervous to do so. And I felt really bad. I felt like we spent a whole academic quarter together learning these skills, but anxiety still reigned supreme for these people. And I looked for books and resources at the time to help, and there weren't many, if at all. So I decided I needed to do something because I really wanted my students' voices to be heard. And so I wrote the book, the first edition of the book. Very shortly after, started my consulting practice. I co-founded with my business partner and saw that the same issues my students were struggling with were issues that were happening in the corporate world. And so the book became something not just to help students academically, but to help those in the professional world. And the website you're talking about, the No Freaking Speaking website, is really a complement to the book. It's something that my publisher had asked to put out to help. And that's really where it's a repository, a place where people can go to see things I've written, other people have written, again, to help people feel more comfortable and confident speaking. And hopefully people are taking advantage of that.
Well, again, they most certainly are. You mentioned a very interesting part. You talk about Bold Eco Communications, one of the leading ventures when it comes to coaching and industry help that goes out for communication in, let's say, Silicon Valley or other places. I'm not really very sure about this because this is the kind of industry that I'm trying to enter into and also trying to learn more and more about. But this all seems so fascinating, which gives me an opportunity to perhaps ask you this question on behalf of a lot of aspirants who try to improve their public speaking, because obviously people who want to speak good on stage do not necessarily have the skills that they need. And one big factor that comes with it, as you have mentioned, is anxiety. I have personally benefited a lot from your videos. As I previously mentioned, as I was nervous, right now I'm considering this as not my performance, but as a conversation, which is a tip of yours.
Great.
What advice would you have to people who want to improve their public speaking by controlling anxiety? Because anxiety inhibits their performance as well as their ventures in order to start with public speaking.
So that, again, I could go on for hours on this, and in the book and in the videos we talk about different techniques, but let me identify three things people could do to start with. First and foremost, give yourself permission to feel nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do. Up to 85% of people say they get nervous when they speak. And I really think the other 15% are lying. I think it is very common for people to get nervous when they communicate in front of others. So we need to give ourselves permission to feel that anxiety. It is not unusual. So what happens is many of us, when we start to feel nervous, get really upset with ourselves or disappointed in ourselves. And that only adds to the anxiety. If you simply say to yourself, this is me being nervous, it's normal and natural to be nervous. By giving yourself that permission, you actually give yourself a sense of agency and control, which can really help. So that's step one. Step two is find ways to desensitize yourself so that when you have that moment of anxiety, it's not new or novel. So you can do this in a couple ways. You can visualize yourself doing the communication before you ever do it. So a couple days in advance, see yourself in the room speaking, see yourself online speaking. You know, when we learn to drive a car, when people learn to fly airplanes, when athletes learn to do a difficult maneuver, they practice it, they visualize it, they go through the routine before they actually do it. The same thing can help you when you speak. So desensitizing yourself so you're not intensely affected when it actually happens really can help. And then finally, realize that when you are communicating, it's not about you. It feels like it's about you, but it really isn't. It's about your message and your audience and what that message means for the audience. So we feel like it's all about us, and that's what makes us nervous. Really, when all effective communicators are really good at putting their energy and effort into what they give their audience. And when you do that, and I call it changing where the spotlight is focused. We get nervous when the spotlight is focused on us. We feel less nervous when we focus that spotlight on our message and our audience. So those three techniques: give yourself permission, desensitizing, and be audience focused, audience centric, can really make a difference in your anxiety.
Right, because that has helped a lot of people, and I believe that also answers a lot of questions. And I'm really sorry, I'm asking you a lot of questions because I believe I want to make the best of this opportunity. One of the last set of questions that I have is related to one of the two lectures that you take. We talk about the virtual presentation, which I believe, due to this pandemic, has taken a lot of traction and has caught a lot of attention of the people. So right now I'm breaking a lot of laws or rules that you talk about. I am continuously trying to focus on the webcam, but I cannot help myself, but I need to look at you as well in order to really cherish this moment. But a little bit about that, because I believe a lot of students can really benefit from that. A lot of lawyers, fresh legal aspirants can benefit from that.
So you are actually doing a great job, far better than many. So you're doing well in your virtual presenting. So there are just a few best practices. I mean, more and more with this pandemic, more and more with technology and the globalization of business, people are going to communicate virtually, and we need to simulate some of the things that we have in person. So what you alluded to earlier, eye contact is critical. When we meet people, when we interact with people, we look them in the eye. We need to mimic that virtually. So you need to train yourself to look at the camera. And that's hard because it means you might not connect or see very clearly the person's image. But when I'm speaking, I look at the camera so it looks like I'm looking at you. Additionally, you want to sit in a way that makes you big. You don't want to slouch and make yourself small, and you're doing a great job of that. You're also gesturing in a way that's meaningful. So these are all some of the tips that can really help people come off as more competent and more connected and engaged with their audiences. So it takes practice. And the biggest bit of advice I give to people when it comes to virtual presenting is practice and record yourself. The tools that most of us use to communicate virtually have recording features. Record yourself, and as painful as it is, watch your recordings and then see what it looks like to other people and then make adjustments. So there are tools right under your fingertips that can help you be better. You just have to take the time to record yourself and watch.
Right, because that is going to help so many people. There are multiple opportunities for me as well, because I try to host this podcast, but a lot of people who are trying to attend or host webinars or sessions, meetings, classes and everything, which this will really benefit a lot of them. My last question to you, Matt, is that the entire principle, a very holistic approach towards effective strategic communication, art of public speaking, confidence is something that you lay a lot of emphasis on. All of this are traits that one can consider as a part of someone's soft skills, which will help them succeed in their respective industries. And coming from a legal fraternity, I believe every law student or every legal aspirant, a lawyer, needs to have these skills in order to really succeed in the industries. So how do you think these skills of effective communication is going to help people? Why is it important for them to effectively consciously work towards building these skills and inculcating them? And how exactly can they do it? As in, how can they practice? Maybe a little bit brief about that.
Sure. So the reason these skills are critical is these are human skills. These are skills about connection, trust, and communication is the way in which we establish connection and trust. And I can't think of a job or an industry where connection and trust aren't important. So as a law student, as an aspiring lawyer, my father was a lawyer, a lot of the work that you do is about building trust. Further, you have to be able to communicate an argument logically. I can't imagine being a good lawyer, being a good teacher, being a good technician or engineer without communication skills. So how do you do it? Well, you have to make the time. You have to there are only three ways to get better at communication as far as I'm concerned. It's repetition, reflection, and feedback.
Right.
So you have to give yourself the opportunity to communicate. And you do that by taking every chance you can to speak up in a meeting, to give presentations. There are organizations, international organizations, things like Toastmasters, where they give you an opportunity to practice.
Yes.
So you need to get the reps in. Think of an athlete, think of a musician. How do they get better? They practice. Second, reflection. Take the time to think about what's working for you and what's not working. There's a definition of insanity that says insane people just do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. We do that with our communication all the time. We don't take time to think about what worked and what didn't, and then the next step to make change. And then finally, feedback. You need to have coaches, teachers, trusted others who can give you honest feedback. And the consulting practice I founded was based on that. My business partner and I really believe that the way people get better is by having people give feedback. And as a teacher, I certainly believe that. So the answer to your question of how do I get better at this, you have to first take the chance, take the risk and say, I'm going to do this, and give yourself opportunities for repetition, reflection, and feedback.
Right, because that obviously is going to help so many people, especially when someone is trying to create strong interpersonal connections with people when they're trying to establish. I believe this is one of the most important learnings that I have received, one of the most cherishing conversations that I've had, that has added so much value, not just to me personally, but to everyone who will tune into this podcast. If you have any closing remarks for all my listeners who are going to tune into this podcast and benefit so much out of it.
Well, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for reaching out and thank you for the time. I have enjoyed watching your videos and I really believe you're doing a service to others, and I respect that very much. When it comes to communication, I simply say this: everybody can get better. No matter where you are in your level of comfort or your level of experience, we can all get better. It's just a matter of taking time. It's investing. It's realizing that this is not a light switch problem. It's not just flip the switch and all of a sudden you're better. It takes time. It takes giving yourself some permission to take risks. And it's about forgiving yourself if things don't go the way you want them to. Eventually you will get better at it. And this world needs good, open, trustworthy communication. And taking this step, taking that risk, I think is so important. And I encourage everybody to do so.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for everything. But I believe we have learned so much, and to have this, actually, we learn a lot from your videos, and that's a fact. But to talk to you personally through this remote conversation, as paradoxical as it is, but I believe it's absolutely cherishing. It's a brilliant opportunity for me, and I am so very grateful. I had a wonderful time. I hope you had a good time too.
I absolutely did. Thank you. And the work you're doing, like I said before, is very helpful. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.